All right, we'll go ahead and get started. I wanted to say thank you for everybody joining us this afternoon. This evening, we have two presentations. We have one from Avery Denny, who's going to be speaking about some of the traditional aspects of bow making and specifically of the usage of it. And we also have Bow Maker, one of our leaders of our workshop, who's going to be joining us after Avery's presentation. He's going to discuss the intricacies of his project and his journey making bows, and so all the challenges and successes. Additionally, we have some of our bow making students. We have a workshop that we're hosting, part of the Navajo Cultural Arts Program, and we have four of our students in the audience, although there's five of them, and so you guys can come and take a look at their works after we finish our presentation. So we hope that you enjoy. Anything, questions that you guys may have, please be, we'll have time for any kind of questions that you guys may want to pose for both of Avery and Bryan. So without we'll go ahead and get started. Avery, you want to go ahead and join us? Thank you.
Good afternoon, good evening. At session it out this shady total closet and the answer. To Totsoni Bashin, Tatness Zani Dashe, Aro Sanjikin Etashin Nala, and the Hostodi Tko, or Yata Ade Enasha. I've been working here at the college for 34 years, and I really enjoy my work here. Enjoy all my fellow students here. Some of you are students. This evening our topic is going to be bow and arrow making, and my topic will be the significance of the bow and arrow from our forefathers' teachings. You can actually say old knowledge or say ancient knowledge. And according to the Navajo teachings, the story that were carried by word of mouth over centuries. And a lot of these stories are told, and it goes back to even at the time of the emergence. Time of the emergence, when once upon a time, way back, this land that we live on, the surface, this ground, it was underwater at one time. And we believe that at the time of the emergence, there was a contest that was established between the supernatural and the earth surface people. They were still coming up from the ground. And the first being to surface to this world was just a little tiny Sakata we called Winishchidi. And at that time, Winishchidi found a way to come into this world and made a barricade where he was sitting at. And these supernatural energy in this world at the time were sort of like they hold that power and leadership, and they came to confront with the Sakata and told him, you don't belong here. You go back into that hole, cover yourself back into that ground, you go live down there. But Sakata said, no, this is my land. This is my spot here. And you can't have it too. This is mine. And she'eti nohoka ne basht nohoka ne, meaning the earth surface, the earth walking being. The earth's surface people is what I represent. And they want to all come into this world to live here. And then they gave him option. If you pass this, you will live here. So there were many trials and call it tests. One test was he's supposed to remain on the surface for 4 days by time and go float in the water for 4 days, which he passed without no question and without no doubt. And he's supposed to sit there patiently too, and they threw everything at his face. They wanted him to blink and be frightened, be scared of these objects coming face into his face. He was supposed to go like this, but no, nothing, he just played it safe and he had patience. And then he learned how to pray. He learned how to sing. Because all this time too, there were sores that came upon his body and inside his body. And then they attempt to kind of like manipulate his mind, but with that prayer, the singing, and then his faith, his patience, and then the skill that he adapted sort of like over his life. He put that into motion, and through that he was able to survive. And on the fourth one, they challenged him, like to do certain things, but he passed every one of them. But after the fourth try, after the fourth time, it was his turn. And then he said, I have one thing for you. Yeah, okay, I'd like to do, and show you. So, and that's the time when they confronted with Witness Chidi and the supernatural energy. They used the arrow, their own arrow, by swallowing that arrow into the mouth and pulling it through the whole body and taking it back on the opposite side, meaning the rear end. And then they inserted from the rear end, and then they took that arrow back over here, and it was something like a life-threatening, sort of like dare. So the Sakata picked up, instead of using their arrow, he had his own arrow that he took from his chest, went like that and took it out, and then he swallowed one of them, and then the other one he put it from his rear end and then pull it vice versa out, and said, this is so simple. You got anything else? All this dare, all this trial, all this is like nothing. So I'm gonna attempt something, and I want you to do it. Since you gave me 4 tries, now it's my turn. So he took that one piece of arrow and the other one, and then he put it under his arm on this side and this side, his armpit, and then he pulled both arrows through his heart in his midsection and pulled that arrow on this side and took it out like this, and then pull it back in there and vice versa. To do it 2 times, like 4 arrows going into his body, through his body. And right there, he pulled that arrow right there and said, see? And it had blood stain on it when he pulled the arrow out. And said, now you do this. Now you do what I did. But these supernatural powers, they all backed up and said, no, I'm not going to dare that. It seemed like you outdid us. So they made a deal right there. They made almost like immigration law. What the heck? Any immigrants, any intruder to come in here, they should have a stake, a land, a claim, and to live here, to have the authority, the power, based on your faith, based on your belief, and based on your patience, your love, compassion. And even today, the Navajos believe that if you have a door in your home, like doorway, you can put these arrows on top like this or like this. Or another is to put these arrows like this and like this over your door. Or you can go like, not cricket arrow, but straight arrow. Like this, and then the other one go like that. So this is a belief that if you put that arrow on top of your door entry, that means you have claimed that land. That means you have faith. You believe in something. And that's how you claim that land as your own, because you lived there. And that's the first story that in the fourth world about arrow. So according to this belief, oral stories and oral histories and different ceremonies came into the fourth world. And each of these Navajo traditional ceremonies that are done for healing, they all have a bow, they all have arrows in their ceremony. All their songs are pertaining to bows and arrow. The jish contain the arrow, the bow and arrow. And these arrows are from the supernatural energy. And these are practices. They come in all form. And this is before mankind. So that's a story that is carried by word of mouth, but through the songs of the ceremonial chant. And when you listen and when you learn songs, you know that, let's say, for example, the red ant way, and then the water way, and then maybe the lightning, female lightning way. They all sing about arrows, lightning arrows, straight arrows, rainbow arrow, and then maybe like sun arrow. They're all in there in component of that. So, and after human beings' existence here came when the birth of the early dawn, the white shell woman was born there. That transcend, and she became changing woman through the cycle of the moon cycle, and through her puberty she gave birth to 2 boys, and they were the twins. Na yet nezgan do Tobaju's chin. Na yet nezgan, and Tobaju's chin is the one that began to live here as 2 boys living in this world of chaos. There's danger everywhere. And their purpose for being here was to rid of all these monsters at the time. And even the holy people believed that these 2 human beings would be the ones that's going to destroy all these evil monsters that were roaming the planet at the time. Yeitso, Asana Rai, Adotel Gate, San Mahalle, Datalia. They started to roam the earth when these 2 were born here. And they had a lot of curiosity. As little boys running around, they always look for adventure. They always want to discover something. They want to go to that dark place where they're forbidden to go. Don't go over there. There's danger over there. They wanted to go over there to see what's over there and what to find in there. and going about their daily routine every day. And one day they confronted the evil monster giant, one of them, and they were captured. And they started a fire, they dig a trench, and then they were supposed to be fried and cooked in that hole in the ground, like a trench. They were supposed to lie in there, and the monster giant would cook them, and he was supposed to eat them. And they were scared walking around, see? And pretty soon they were crying with tears in their eyes and coming this way. And then right there, a unfamiliar place they came to, it kind of felt strange, and they saw movements in the earth. And here they looked very carefully, and there's a horned toad they called Na'ashon-Udichiji. And the Na'ashon-Udichiji came forth. It was camouflaged in these rocks, and then it came out. And this is a prehistoric animal creature too, came forth and then said, "What are you crying for?" And the twins said, "We're scared of that giant there." And then the little tiny creature, the horned toad, said, "Him, you know what? He's scared of me. I have something that is more powerful than that creature. And then I will teach you," he said. So they went into that place, and that's where the twins learned about knives. That's where the twins learned about how to cut things with rock, flint, besh. They cut things with that knife. And then they also learned how to make like axe. They called it sennich. And they became skillful in that, and they picked it up right there. They call it, I guess, tomahawk. And then we call it sennich. And then they developed, or they made clubs to throw and to hit their target. And then they developed these arrowhead. They don't know what it was at the time, but that's what they picked up. And that's what Na'ashon-Udichiji had on his body. When you move from his body armor, and that's where you find all these different patterns of flint, rock, arrow, knives. Even on the crown here, the head, on the body. Oh, this one is going down this way. From the back, it's going the opposite direction. And then it's all sharp gadget all around. And then that's where they learn how to sing Na'ashon-Udichiji Biyin. And they say, "Hey, yang besh ashike nishle go besh ashike nishle ya ena besh ashike nishle go la besh ashike nishle ya ena anen Na'ashon-Udichiji ishki Allah shenishle go la besh ashike nishle ya ena besh tilchili ya shike." So it goes all the way. So they learn how to be dressed with this armor given to the twins from a grandfather figure. And then they made themselves maybe like a hat gear, and they put it on their head and said, "Go walk up to that creature, that evil creature, and take off your crown and then show him what you made." And it's almost resemblant to the horned toad's head. So they picked it up and they walked up to that giant, which was laying down all casual, and said, "Hey, giant, look at what we found. It's beautiful, look." And then he said, "Nah, that's not beauty. There's nothing like that in this world. There's no such thing as beauty. Everything's ugly here." So finally they convinced that giant to look this way, and there they were, little tiny boys with that Na'ashon-Udichiji armor, gear, and the headdress, and they picked it up and they showed that giant, and that giant stood up, was scared, and then they started to sing that song. And every time they went like that, he would back up, and every time he would back up, he's that fur closer to the edge of that big old rock canyon. And every time they went like this, he would step back, and he was distracted. And by the time they did it maybe like 4 times, and he fell off the cliff, and that giant died. So from there, they were happy, and then they ran back to the house, to their mother with all the tools that they were provided. And then the story and the child development of that boys came to a time where they had changed their voice, and they went to sweat. And over there, and there, the grandfather, the oratory divinity, was able to converse with the twins sitting there in the sweat, singing songs about protection, singing songs about certain things, and pretty soon they stepped out on the front of the tache, and he walked up the hashech. He went to a tree, juniper tree, and he got his cutting edge and cut that branch off, and the tree was like this, all like this, with the top still on it like this, no arrowhead at the tip, and just cut it like that. And then he got a old stump tree too, and then he just made a real simple arrow like this, bow. These things too, like. And then he ran a string right here to make that arrow, real simple, like a toy, but it was real. And he gave it to the twin boys, 2, like a pair. And one was black, the other one was red, meaning the outside was black, inside was red. Vice versa, the other one was red and inside was black. And it had symbols on it like lightning like this, and then straight lines like this to symbolize lightning and straight lightning. And these things were given to the twin boys, not handed to them. This was used for them to utilize, to be ordained, to be sort of like, to be initiated, so that they could learn to discipline their mind, their body, and they had to learn songs to go with that. So they inherit their first bow and arrow. So when a young child developed into that puberty stages, when the voices change, in the Navajo boys' puberty ceremony, boys' puberty rites, passage into adulthood, that's where the arrow is utilized. You furnish the bow and arrow, just like the one that my brother will use, and it was given to the young boy. Just like that girl's side, they gave them a baton, and then maybe back in and then they mold the female, the body and the mold, and they give them the physical image, spiritual image. On the boys' side, they use the bow and arrow to mold the young man to become masculine, to be a man, to reach that stage there they can be more mature and disciplined and learn how to use the bow and arrow. So that's how they inherit this. And what's so neat about this is after learning how to utilize later on, and they get their piece of their arrowhead right here, and pretty soon they will put it right there at the top, like that. And they will wrap it like this and put their arrowhead on top of that, and they will be more mature to use for hunting, provider of food. So during that sweat time, now yet is gonna press the bow and arrow on the feet of the twin boys, and he molded them, and that's where also the song of a child, a chin begin, na kishin begin. That's where it starts there. So child development for a young warrior, they inherit a name, given a name like a protector's name in there. So at that same time, so then they wear like a arrowhead around their neck to place it right here over their heart, over their body in this midsection. Basis so the song that they use is kind of like, if you hear it again, it would sound like this. That's all I can share. That in other words, you got to give me $1,000 more. What the heck? And they inherit that song too, and they learn it from their grandfather. The grandfather sang it for them by applying the spirit of that bow and arrow to them. And when they learned it, they learned to use this song to engage the practice of shooting, aiming. And at that time, if you had a arrow like this, straight arrow like this, on the front side, you're shooting like this. You put a straight line like this, roll straight like this, and then that will be like a symbol of a straight line, like straight lightning. So this would be your correct aim to align with this straight line right here. On the other side, this is the other side of this arrow on the opposite side. And here, then you would probably see like the zigzag like this. And it will be like this. That is going to be on the other side, behind the other arrow. So the straight line would be the one that you aim with and shoot your target. But on this side is the deadly part, is the electricity arrow. They used it. And then the quiver too also is provided. The quiver, you put arrows in there. 5, 7, 8, 11. These are odd numbers. You put your arrows by 5, 7. This is supposed to be a 9 here, so I'm sorry. 11 and all of that. So that many arrows. Just like on the female side, they have it is seen that is number 5, 7, 9, and 11. So there, or it is seen, or that one over there in the back is probably like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. That's what he's seen. So they come in odd numbers. So you have a quiver. Quiver is made from a cougar skin hide or a bobcat hide, and they have that, as a quiver. So these are things that are used with the arrow. And then when the twins, they went to see their father, the sun barrier, over there they convinced the sun barrier, their father, that they were truly his kids, his boys, his sons. And finally he gave in and said, you are really my children. And there they asked him, like, what do you want? Do you need anything? I know you are not here just to visit. You came for something, to see me. And then the twin boys, when they reached that time in their life, and they had to be very intelligent by answering, responding to that question, said, we want your lightning arrow, your straight lightning arrow, your zigzag lightning arrow, your sunbeam lightning arrow, your rainbow lightning arrow. So these 4 type of arrow were given to the twins. And then at the same time, they were given a bow and an arrow. One of them looked like straight arrow like this. The other one was like this. Something like this, and then it had a line right here too. It resembled a zigzag. So if you saw it like here, it would be sort of like this. And then the line would straight go in there, like it would be curved like this. It would be almost be like. So it will be similar a bow like this and be shot like that. So they call it alti dilkil, ara koje alti silkhani edik atsan ishka hatsolgak shabat olk ado a nats ilik ado alti silkhani alti dilkil. And over there the sun, they gave him another regalia made out of flint to be a warrior, to be a hunter. And that's where we got the name Navajo, like a warrior, like a hunter. So now we call ourselves Navajo. That was mistranslated by people from another race, but we still believe that we can still have that warrior discipline of being Navajo, to be a warrior and to be a hunter, to be a provider, to be a protector of this land and the water, the natural energy that's here, the plants, the animals that are here. So we provide that by having to hold our bow and arrows and to be called Navajo, and to have the obligation or the authority to protect this land, this sovereign land, to be called Navajo. So that's our goal and the discipline of what is a warrior, of when you have a bow and arrow. There are songs that are used, and when the coming of the European into this Southwest and other tribes, when they came onto the Navajo, the Nebikeya, the Navajo, the Nebikeya, on sacred land, the Navajos went out to protect these sacred lands, to protect their families, and they defended this land. And during, went as far as the story of this, went as far as World War II, when Navajos code talkers, they were chosen, selected. The Navajos, they gathered themselves and they practiced this belief of making these code talkers to resemble a sort of like a arrow per person like this, and to go into combat resembling a arrow people, Ka besodizin, Alkin besodizin, Atsin ish besodizin, Hatsolra besodizin. They could go overseas and fight this evil power, evil spirit, which was over there. And that's what they said, that these are protection prayers, that you can have these arrows in your home for protection. And anytime that you had a bad dream, you could go over there and pick up this arrow and utilize it with a protection prayer. Today, that's how it will be used. So let's hope the time is up. So that's 30 minutes. Thank you. Any question? Yeah.
How did they put the arrowheads together?
They tied it up. They didn't use glue. They used a string, animal hide, and they wrapped it. And when they wrapped it, the string was wet, and then when they wrapped it, and the hide dried up, and it became real tight, so it would get loose. Yes.
Wait. We watched a video about the two twins, and we saw the pictures of the Navajo tacos. Like here's the thing to go to another person and another person.
Yeah, I think so. I think you're right.
we watched that at school.
Oh, really?
Yeah,
That's good.
The pictures.
All right.
How did they make it look like
Yeah.
the bow arrow, like little cricket, like?
Yeah, they made it so if you saw it, it would all be the same straight like this on the side, your next angle. It will be all like that straight. But when you look at it on the side, it will be like this, and it will be bent. The arrow itself is going to be shaped like this, the wood. But if you twist it or if you make it like a bow, the zigzag will be in the structure like this, and then it will still, on the side, it will still be straight. But if you saw it like this, it will be like in form of a lightning.
Like this?
And I put the string right there, and then right there, that's right when in here, that's where the arrow is going to go.
Like a lightning, like this? Like what?
And then another part is the shield, too, also. It has a string right here. It has a feather right here, live eagle feather, on top of that. So a long time ago, what they did was when they butchered I almost had a cow. There was no cows back then. It was a horse that wintertime Navajos, they ate horses when it snowed and when it was like real cold, and they made and butchered a horse. And when they took that hide of the animal, when the hide was still damp, they would build a big fire and throw that hide with the fur down, and they throw it over the hot fire, the hot flame, and then as it dries right there, it would shrink, and then by moving it around to the right place, and then it would become hardened all the way out in the handle. Out of they would trim the side, and that will become a shield. Even a bullet can't go through that. Even an arrow will just bounce off it. And they put a string right here, so the shield would be like so much in a diameter circle like this, and they put a live eagle feather on it, and they put a string right there, so they got carried around in their hand like this. Even if they stood at the edge of the cliff, they could just jump off and took that shield and then use it as a glider and land it way over there and continue going like that. So that's how they moved around at one time. So we invented all these things that technology have to offer. Thank you.
Very insightful information. Good evening, everybody. I was just kind of told I wasn't really given a direct structure, so I wrote out what I wanted to say. Otherwise, I'd probably go all over the place all night and try to keep me on the same track here. So Keeping in Navajo tradition, I'll go ahead and introduce myself. Fiat Shi'e Bryan Taylor Nisha. Torich Eating Shle, Totsot Ni Bushichin, Hawan Planet, Dashiche, and Shastane, Dashanella. Akut Ego Dinan Shle. Good evening, everybody. My name is Bryan Taylor. Let me just go ahead and get started with my story here. My father is Richard Begay. My mother is Caroline Smith. I'm from St. Michael's, Arizona. Graduated from Winter Rock High School. I did attend some classes at Denny College at your satellite office in Winter Rock. I'm married to Rachel Taylor. My wife is here with my son. I have two sons, Kylan, who is 2 months, and another son who is 7. I want to thank you for your attendance and your interest in tonight's lecture. I was asked to provide some information about bow making and what it means to me in my journey. So let me just go ahead and jump right into it. My interest in bow making started at a young age. Like many young children, we grew up watching our parents. The same is said for me. I remember my father on a brisk spring morning filing and whittling away at a stick, bending it, checking the shape of this absurdly large stick. And me trying to look busy, so I want to get put to work. I was watching him from the corner of my eye. And a couple of these weekends go by, and I start to notice a distinguished shape in the stick he was playing with. I got really excited once I found out he was making a bow. I thought, oh my goodness, a real Indian. So it's pretty exciting. I watched as he strung it up, pulled it, seeing the smug look on his face when it didn't break. I think we were both surprised. We looked at each other, and he made it look really easy. So I thought I could do that. I could probably do it better, faster. That's the day I learned the value of patience. I stole one of his prized bow woods and began whittling away at it, not knowing the value of that particular wood. At the time, I just went at it. No guidance or direction, just copied the motions of my dad. If it isn't obvious by now, my lack of respect and patience translated into my bow. It broke. The first bow I made had broke. Rushed into it, too excited to be a real Indian myself. I held that $200 broken stick in my hand and I cried because it was priceless to me. Now my dad was a stern man, Vietnam veteran, the kind of guy he didn't tell you to do things twice. And that day he surprised me. He found me with my broken stick, and I knew I was gonna get a whipping. Like most Native American dads, they're pretty stern and not very forgiving. But that day he surprised me. He told me, he just looked at me and he saw the failure in my eyes and my face, and just told me, "I'm sorry, son." And that was all I needed from him, and I knew that was the only sympathy I would get from this man, and it was enough for me. With that experience in my pocket, I moved on, started harvesting wood myself, cheaper wood that was available to me, and that wood was tamarax or salt cedar. That's the wood that grows in the washes around here. If you're not familiar with it, if you're driving down towards Navajo, you look on the side of the road and you see these red bushes everywhere. To some people it probably looks like trash, but I'll get a little bit more into that. I got better at my craft. My interest was catapulted by movies like Lord of the Rings or 300. Seeing the guy with the ears, I have big ears too. I was like, oh man, that's cool. Maybe I'll be a good bowyer too. Maybe I'll make some awesome bows. And I believe 300, they used the Persian bows in that film. I became fascinated with one of mankind's oldest forms of ingenuity. But most of all, from a book that my dad kept in the house. The book was titled Monster Slayer, if I remember. The story of Nayet, Nezgana, and Tobadishchine, the Navajo spirit legends, the twin warriors. And I was kind of happy to hear that some of what I remember still reflects off of what Avery was teaching about. And I read in that book how Monster Slayer made an arrow out of lightning. And I found that traditional Navajo arrows, just the same way that Avery had told us, kept that carving on their arrows. They put a male and a female lightning on the base and the top of their arrow. And that's another lesson that I got from bow making, learning to distinguish the difference between male and female lightning. Probably something that not any tribe would know, probably more specific to Navajo culture. And if you've ever noticed a tree struck by lightning, some trees you would see a straight split right down the bark, which is representative of the female lightning. And some trees that have a zigzag or maybe a spiral around the base of the tree or all the way around, and representing the male lightning. The same markings were made on our arrows. From that, I really felt a connection to the past, to my ancestral roots, and it was more than just a story to me. I had a real-life, tangible connection to see nature, and that translated into our traditional arrows and stories. So I did some research, found that humans have been making the bow and arrow for about more than 60,000 years, I believe. They say that because they found recent evidence in Africa of projectiles. Projectiles meaning arrowheads. If you wouldn't know, and a common person would probably think, the bigger an animal, I'm going to need a really big arrowhead to take down that animal. I'm going to need a lot of weight on it, and that's a common way of thinking. Bigger, faster, stronger, but that's not how it worked for an arrow. The stronger arrow and the more deadly the arrow was actually came from the point of the arrow, and some of the bigger game were brought down by what was called bird points, arrowheads no bigger than the size of a dime. And some of those points were found in Africa and translated into people understanding that we've been making bows and arrows for quite some time, humans in general, not just Native Americans. So it was more than just a bent stick to me. It was a connection to one of the oldest forms of human ingenuity in the way of life. By this time, it became part of my life, and I looked at many things differently. Where some people saw yucca, they probably thought of dry, arid, plants, or maybe even a shampoo or fruit from the banana yucca, right? But when I saw yucca, I looked at it and I saw plant fibers, I saw weaving patterns, I saw a bowstring that could be made from the, if you ever notice a yucca, there's twines that come off the side of the leaves that could be harvested and waxed and weaved into a bowstring. Where most people saw rocks and bushes, I seen potential hunting and survival weapons. Bow making branched off into flint knapping and arrowhead making. I made arrows out of greasewood. If you don't know what a greasewood is, it's not a forgiving wood. It's usually growing all different kind of directions and has to be worked with heat and treated with pressure to be straightened out. And as I understand, that was a common wood used for Navajo arrows. And once you kind of get to know the material, you understand why the Navajos chose that wood, not because it was so stubborn, but because it had a really high density and held to shape once it was shaped and made into an arrow. So I made arrows out of greasewood, fastened the points to the arrows with pinion pitch. Back in the day, arrowheads were fastened to arrows with sinew. And if you don't know what sinew is, it's tendon, animal tendon. There are several parts of an animal to harvest. The tendon, the most sought after for bow makers is the Achilles tendon of large game animals, and it can also be harvested off the back of some large game animals as well. So tendon was harvested, dried, softened up with a hammer or maybe a wood or whatever, and that was soaked in water. When it was wet, it kind of got sticky, and they tied their arrowheads to their arrows with a sinew, and it was probably better than superglue, modern day superglue. I tried to keep to my primitive roots as much as possible, but I did run into a problem. I quickly found out there was not a lot of people left who knew how to make the traditional Navajo bow, and it was pretty sad to kind of ask around, and not a lot of people knew anything about it. The most common answer I got from people was, "Oh, I had a uncle or a great uncle, twice removed. He would talk about this or that, and so on and so forth." And I kind of gave up after a while and put together what I could, and I didn't want to believe it was true, but there was and probably is no one left that knows how to make the traditional Navajo bow. I know they are on display at the Navajo Nation Museum, but to find somebody who could actually tell you how the wood was harvested and how the sinew was harvested and how the bow was put together, I'm sure the songs that were sang it was probably a very spiritual process throughout the whole thing, and couldn't find anybody to teach me that. So part of my story technique, sadly, it comes from a Caucasian man, and it's not all for a loss. My dad took me to a bow shop in Grants, New Mexico, when I was young. And I had a compound bow, and we were trying to find a bowstring for it, endless looped bowstring. If you guys are familiar with archery, that's a single strand that goes through, and it has a serving around it, and that goes to the more modern compound bows. The guy there at the shop, he told me of a local guy who still knew how to make bow and arrows the old-fashioned way, was the way he said. So me and my dad were pretty interested, and we went to go meet this man. And he was pretty happy to teach me for the low price of $20 an hour. So not bad, I would say, for that time. My dad took me there. He left me there for about 3 hours. He only took me the one time, and the guy was probably about 75 years old. He told me about simple bowyer's terminology, how to keep the integrity of a bow, the backing, which will prevent it from breaking or exploding or failing. It's not something you want with a bow. And pretty much there's a lot that goes into keeping that bow from breaking. The limbs are under extreme compression and stretching. And he also gave me a hands-on tutorial on sinew backing and how to weave a bowstring. And that's pretty much all I got from him. And from there, started learning the rest of it hands-on. The sinew, like I was saying, is preferred by bowyers. It comes from the Achilles tendon of large game animals, such as deer, elk, and moose. There's another thinner, longer strip of tendon running down the back of these game animals, but it doesn't carry the same characteristics as the Achilles tendon. The gentleman also introduced me to some life-saving books, such as Bows and Arrows of the Native Americans by Jim Ham. If anybody ever gets into bow making, making traditional bows or the primitive way, Arthur Jim Ham's going to come up. The name Jim Ham's going to come up a lot. He's an accomplished bowyer, and he wrote a 4-volume book called The Bowyer's Bible, which a lot of people build their bows by. And my skills became a lot more technical after that. I surpassed the Arab truck stop door hangers and joined the group of bowyers whose bows could rival Olympic recurves. No, not really. Now a little about bows. Bows differ from tribe to tribe. Not all Native American tribes use sinew, and some didn't use backing at all. When I say backing, I'm talking about some sort of substance used to reinforce the back of a bow, which keeps it from breaking and really helps keep the bow together and makes it a lot more functional. And the most favorite form of backing is sinew for a lot of reasons. Some Indian tribes decorated. Oh yeah, all right, great. Evan here gave me his bow to show off. Yeah, so here's a bow. One of the bows that we made during the class, shaped out with oak, gamble oak, and sinew backed. And so how they would do it, I guess in the primitive way, they would soften the tendons. When the tendon is cut, it's dried, and it's about 12 inches long if it's a large game animal, and it's softened with a hammer or a rock. We used a ball peen hammer and a stump, which was pretty effective. We stripped it up into strands, soaked it, and dipped it in wood glue. And how they used to do it, how Native Americans did it, was they used hide glue. And hide glue is made, well, pretty much by boiling hide and hooves and tendons. And if you boil it long enough, they found out that it turns into a glue. And that's what they used to fasten the sinew to the bow. And then hide glue is very compatible because, it's an animal product just like sinew. And if you had a chance to take a look at a couple of those are sinew-back bows. And I chose the wood gamble oak because that is from around here. That's the oak you're going to go up and find in the mountains locally. That's some of my dad's meeting wood. We cut it about maybe 4 or 5 years ago, so I knew it was seasoned, and I just went and found some straight pieces, and yeah, I said, yeah, we can use this because it's a typical wood that Navajos would have had available to them back in the day, I guess. Excuse me. Some of the other tribes, they put snakeskin on their bows. I know it's taboo, Navajos, you don't mess with the snake, devil. They had a purpose for that. Snakeskin provides a natural camouflage, and it waterproofed the back of their bow. Hide glue is susceptible to moisture, and if it gets too moist, the hide glue will fail and come off the bow. So this snakeskin served several purposes other than just camouflage. And of course, Navajos traditionally didn't use snake because that's taboo. Some of the most prominent sinew-back bows, some of the best Native American bows were made from the Sioux tribes, Comanche, and much of the Plains tribes. They preferred sinew backing their bows because of sinew made the wood a lot stronger. And if you want to get real technical, it added a lot of tensile strength, and it casted the arrow a lot faster. It kind of almost transformed the wood into something like a rubber band, which made it very effective. A general rule of thumb for bow making is a bow can't be drawn more than half its length. So if a bow is about 60 inches long, it can't be drawn more than 30 inches or the bow will fail. But with the sinew backing, like I mentioned, it tends to turn the wood almost into something like a rubber band. So with the sinew backing, the tribes found out they could make the bows shorter, and they started messing with this. And what happened when they made the bows shorter, they were able to put it on their horseback. And the mounted horseback bowyer was probably one of the most deadliest warriors in history up until the introduction of the rifle. They were unrivaled, and for good reason too. A good they call it horse bow. They're short for the reason that they use it on top of a horse. It's gonna be really hard to take a big longbow like the one I have there and try to transfer back and forth. You're gonna be dragging it all over your horse. You might confuse your horse or get tangled in his hair, or all kind of stuff might happen. But a shorter bow could be easily transferred. And if you've seen in much of the Western movies, Braves riding off, and they have that famous turn around and shoot. I think they even have it in some of the Japanese movies too. So that was a pretty effective technique in documented in movies, and as well as some other literature. Some other tribes skip wood altogether, and some tribes even, I believe some of the northern tribes got into making bows out of horns. You may not believe it, but a stubborn old ram's horn can be turned into a pretty deadly weapon. Some of the Persian bows, I refer to the Persians a lot because I believe they made some of the best, most deadliest bows, and they're kind of like notorious for shooting over a mile, and that's a pretty long distance for a primitive weapon to shoot over a mile. And they were pretty effective killing weapons or tools. We shouldn't always refer to them as weapons because they were used to harvest animals and take care of them, feed our families. So, process of creating a bow out of a horn, like say for example, a mountain lion, or no, I'm sorry, not mountain, mountain sheep. A mountain sheep's horn, of course, is not straight. It has a curl in it. And I guess what the tribes used to do was they would find a hot spring. They would get the mountain sheep horn and put it in the hot spring for a couple of days for it to soften up. And I had mentioned before, I make arrowheads. And one of the first rocks I used to learn was an obsidian arrowhead. And obsidian's volcanic glass. And I'm pretty sure a lot of people know nowadays, it's common knowledge, obsidian glass is used in surgery because it cuts down to the micron. It's very, very sharp. I think they might have more modern knives now, but they do use obsidian glass for surgical procedures. And it is a very sharp knife. A very sharp edge. I've cut myself, whittling with bows, and it's kind of funny that when I cut myself with a knife, the cut would stay open, it would bleed for a little while, and it would close. But the scary thing about cutting myself with an obsidian for the first time, it just kept running. It was pretty freaky. I'm like, whoa, this is pretty serious stuff, and I learned to respect the rock a lot quicker. And that was the rock of choice used to carve out the sheep's horns, so it's pretty sharp. They would carve it out, carve the back, carve the belly, and then they would soak it in a hot spring again, and then they would tie it to a piece of wood and straighten it out. They would keep whittling at it, keep carving, and keep shaping it. And of course, you would need 2 horns to make a bow. They would join the horns together and secure it with hide glue, wrap the handle with sinew, and that would be the bow. They would shape it and then put sinew on the horn again. And horn is a pretty, horn bow is a pretty special bow because, as I mentioned, wooden bow standards is, you can't draw more than half the length of the bow. Horn bow doesn't play by the rules. It could be drawn in all different manners of lengths, and they could be made pretty short. If you look into other cultures and tribes, horn bows were pretty deadly weapons and one of the most sought after bows. And Native Americans did it as well. I believe the northern tribes were the ones who really took after making bows out of horns. And it wasn't just mountain sheep. They made them out of elk horns, moose, buffalo. They even made buffalo rib bows. Excuse me. Kind of got lost here. I'm jumping all over the place, so I wrote it all down. And going back to the Navajo people, the Denny people, we used what material was available to us at the time. And some of the wood commonly used were ash, cedar, of course, oak, mulberry, and Osage orange. Navajo bows were found to have sinew backing as well. There's one detail about the Navajo bow that is really noteworthy. Most of the tribes opted for large game animal tendons, but what I think is so amazing about the Navajo people is that we didn't opt for the large game animals. We used cougar tendons to back our bows. And I think that's pretty impressive because I really wouldn't want to hunt a cougar today, even with today's modern rifles and everything. It's still a pretty impressive feat. I say this because let's do some primitive math right now. And so for a typical bow, it takes about 7 to 8 pieces of sinew. 7 to 8 tendons. So there's 2 tendons per animal, left leg, right leg. Those are harvested. And those tendons from the large game animals are typically around 12 to 13 inches. So cougar is a smaller animal. And you don't get that great of a yield from a cougar, maybe about 5 to 6 inches most. So we'll probably need about around 12 tendons. So that's, more primitive math. That's 6 cougars. They didn't just hunt and kill 1 cougar. They hunted and harvested 6 cougars. And I think that's pretty amazing. That's a real testament to the Navajo warrior to hunt an apex predator and use it in their bow making. So that's one thing that brings a lot of pride to me as a Navajo and as a Navajo bow maker. And I believe, sorry, I got sidetracked. I was supposed to talk a little bit slower, more down the last page here. Sorry, guys. Well, I wanted to wrap this all up by sharing some lessons that were grafted into my character through bow making. As I mentioned before, bow making taught me patience. I found that the fastest way to work is by going slow. A rushed bow, if I rushed a bow, it'll have mistakes, and it could take me twice as long to fix it. Or even worse, I wouldn't be able to correct it at all. And the wood is pretty time-consuming to season and harvest. A good bow-making wood, such as Osage orange, when harvested wet, needs to be cured and seasoned for about at least 2 years before it can be made into a functional bow. So if I rush through a bow and make mistakes, that could cost me a lot more time than just 15, 20 minutes of taking my time now. So, patience was learned. I learned to respect my tools. I put all my tools away. That even goes down to my sockets, my ratchets from working on my vehicles. Always clean off the oil. And tool is a very important thing with bow making because primitive archers didn't have the tools we have now. They used rock chisels and, of course, obsidian to whittle out their bows, and that's very time-consuming. I developed a level of respect for the living world. I caught a rare glimpse into my ancestors' eyes. I kind of thought how they might see the world, how they might see nature, and how they worked with the natural world to become apex predators, hunters, and providers. I always wanted to work with someone who had an interest in bow making. Unfortunately, guys my age don't really share the same interests around my area. In a world where our culture, language, respect, integrity as a people is disappearing, I feel some solace that I still have some time to share what I know. And I'll share freely, willingly, and willingly as time permits. I have 2 boys who need my time and attention too. And that's all I had to share with you guys. I was kind of quick, so willing to answer any questions you guys should have about the bows. If not, you can go ahead and take a look at what our class had made and some of the bows that I made. The bow on the left is Osage orange bow. It's a sinew-backed, and it was finished with the claying process, which pretty much means I hid all the sinew. Other tribes use, clay, as the term says. But for me, I used the same wood, the filings. I mixed it with glue and put it all back over the tendon. Going through a forest, you don't want that tendon to get picked up on a branch, break or anything. So I made it a lot more smoother. The whispers there are to provide silencing. It provides a dampening effect. It keeps the string from twanging. And that's just some rabbit fur that I got. I used to have a lot of cougar fur, but I ran out and I thought, cougar fur shouldn't be too hard to get. And went to City Electric and it's about $1,000 a hide. I said, I should have, took care of my fur a little bit better. But that's just a rabbit fur. It'll still do the job. The string there is not a traditional Navajo string. That bow there is made for hunting. It's a 29-inch draw at 50 pounds. And I had to make use a string that would accommodate that type of weight. So that's a B52 Dacron bowstring, woven bowstring. And there's a serving on the arrow knocking area. The other bow on this side, I did not make. My dad got me that as a gift from another bowyer who wanted me to continue on and try other materials and composites. That's a bamboo-backed Osage orange bow with horn tips. It's tipped with horns. And that's the guy who made that is not around anymore. He had passed away, and that's a bow that I really cherished. That's shooting around 65 pounds at 25 inches. It's a really strong bow. No sinew on it. It's just backed with bamboo. It's all wood and adhesive. And another bow at the bottom, just another Osage orange with a canvas backing. And our class's bows are mulberry oak bows with a sinew backing. Any questions? Russian olive? No, I never tried Russian olive. That's with the kind of like long tan or greenish leaf, was it?
Yeah.
No, I never tried a Russian olive.
Yeah, it's the same thing as the boat art.
Oh, okay.
It's the same. It has the spines. When you see the growth rate, they're similar to each other. They both grow in places where there's a lot of water. And then when you're scraping it, you see like the bubbles and stuff there.
Okay. No, I just kind of took to what the known woods were. I never really experimented too much. It's really time consuming to make a bow, and it's kind of heartbreaking when you get so far and it breaks. You're like, oh man, you put so much time and thought and energy into it, and it's just really something you don't want to do. And I kind of stuck to some of the safer woods, but now I wouldn't mind trying Russian olive. You said it has those little green berries, or like really light colored green berries on them, right? Yeah, I think I know what you're talking about. So if we need to harvest more wood for the next class, I might take them out to my neighbor's yard or something.
You were saying that you have 2 boys. Would you be looking into learning more male traditional ceremonies for them, especially with the bow stuff in mind?
I respect our culture. I was raised traditionally, and through my own personal experiences have chose a different path, and I'm a Christian. And I know the stories, and it was pretty sad to turn my back on what I relied on for so long. But through a spiritual experience, I chose a different path. And I'll leave it up to my boys if they want to, ask their grandfather. It's fine, and of course, they're gonna see how their dad looks at life. But I'm more than happy to teach them bow making. And traditionally, young boys or men are not supposed to dabble in it at a young age because it can mess with their head. That's what they say. The deer, it's not a good animal to have around the house because it affects a female's mind, has them do things they're not supposed to. And at the same time, a young child might not respect the weapon as it is and could hurt somebody else or, develop, how was I told, developed a bad way of thinking. So it's more for a mature mind. And I started, when I was about 13, after I started going to sweat baths. So I started around there. Any other questions?
I have a question. I noticed that Patches were making cedar bowls. Have you ever tried food from a certain type of cedar? Like there's a cedar out there. I don't know what it's called, but in Navajo they call it cut. Have you ever tried one from using that?
No, I've never put the time into harvesting a cedar. I wanted to. Of course, I said I look at the world a little bit differently. I'll pick up a piece of wood, and flex it and see how it bends. And I noticed cedar had some really interesting characteristics, and that's one of my projects that I want to do. I want to try making a cedar bow. I have aurochs horns. It's another project that I'm going to be doing, and just experimenting with bow making. But I haven't made one yet, but I'll probably be doing something like that in the near future. Out of cedar. I see there's a cedar bow up there on top of the door too. You can tell by the colors of the wood. It's a cedar, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, so I understand the Western tribes, cedar was their choice of wood too for bow making. When historians had looked up, what the tribes carried with them, cedar was one of the most common woods, along with yew wood and mulberry. So, did I answer your question?
Yeah.
Okay.
And so, in shooting the bows that you had made, what's the farthest distance you were able to shoot a bow? I mean, an arrow through utilizing your bow?
I want to say about 85 yards. I would I would always challenge myself, and I'd say about 85 yards. And even further than that, my bows weren't strong enough. A compound bow is more user friendly because there's cams on the bow, and when you pull the string, the cams let off a lot of the poundage from the string. In a bow such as this, you're going to have to be all back muscle, and you're going to be holding it for a long time, and that's 50 pounds, 60 pounds, 80 pounds. You're holding against your shoulders and your arms, and it's I never made a bow strong enough. Well, I guess I never got strong enough to shoot a bow that far. Let's just say that. Yes, sir.
Question. Well, first off, thank you for the presentation, the lecture, and education. You mentioned classes twice. Can you elaborate on that?
The classes?
Yes.
Oh, yeah. They just had recently started from the Navajo Cultural Arts Program, and we just did our first class. This is our first run, and it was about a week ago. Last weekend, we were out here making these bows, and I'm really not the person to contact on how to get into the class. I believe you have to contact the Navajo Cultural Arts Program, and I understand there is a waiting list. So if they like what I did, they'll probably bring me back and do it again, and I'm more than willing to share what I know, because like I said, it's exciting for me, and it's exciting to know that other people are interested in doing this. And some people might think, oh, it's boring, I want to go play games and go play Torok and hunt dinosaurs, but this is real world and real life, and you can make an amazing thing here, and I'm more than happy to share that with anybody.
That's through the college?
Yes, I believe so.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I just want to say I've made a boat 4 times now with the Osage Orange,
Oh, great.
and the first 3 broke.
Oh, man.
The first one was after it was done, we were shooting it around, and it cracked. And I tried repairing it with sinew, but eventually gave out. The second one, I broke it while I was tailoring it,
Oh man.
getting it down to shape.
Yeah.
Testing it, and then it snapped on me. And then the third time, it was supposedly done again, and my friend was messing around with it, and then it snapped it.
Oh man, I'm sorry.
All of them were long bows, and then the fourth time now, I made a short one last year. It's not done yet, it's still, but it hasn't snapped yet.
Oh, okay. Good. That's good.
I think it's gonna snap this time.
Yeah, fingers
Thanks for telling
crossed.
your story.
Yeah, you're welcome. Thank you. You know, that's part of the bow making process. You're gonna break bows, and that's what will indefinitely make you a better bowyer. That's just part of the learning process. It's kind of hard, and I've been through that too. Like, you just get this sinking feeling, like, man, especially when it starts to crack too. But you'll get better and better at it, and start to learn the characteristics of your wood. And I know Osage is kind of a hard wood to find around here, so just stick with it. And if I'm available to give out my information, I'm more than willing to help you and
For sure.
give you some tips on the backing. It sounds like you're having problems with the backing. So.
Yeah, sure. I work at the Wind Drop Center.
Oh, okay. All right, great.
Come chat with me anytime.
All right, cool. I'll get your name after class.
Bye.
I wanted to thank everybody. My name is Christine Ami, and my apologies for not introducing myself earlier. But I run the Navajo Cultural Arts Program, so if you guys are interested in programming like this, if you could do us a tremendous favor, and we have surveys for the end of this presentation and lecture series, if you guys could fill those out, that not only allows us and gives us immediate feedback on what you guys thought about today's presentation, it encourages our presenters to keep doing what they're doing. They really thrive on that public outlet. Not only because it's good intrinsically, but they know that it passes down. I see a lot of kids here in the lecture, and we were getting a lot of inquiries. People wanted to bring their children to the workshop. There was women who wanted to participate, so there was a lot of different cultural knowledge that went into even just discussing the possibilities of people joining the workshop. We had a wait list. This was our first class. It's a 4-day workshop that we held over 2 weekends. And so what you guys can do before you take off, this is in progress bows that we have right now from 5 of our participants. We like to keep our workshop small so that way we can have a lot of one-on-one instruction time, but it does look like in the future we will be hosting additional bow making workshops, and we have other workshops as well, everything from silversmithing, basketry, weaving, and we'll be looking into women-specific workshops in the spring as well, so stirring sticks and those kinds of gender-specific cultural arts that we'll be hosting as well. A lot of our advertisement goes through Facebook, but we do have advertising through the Navajo Times and KTNN, so that's other ways that you guys can stay in contact with the workshops that we do have. I wanted to say thanks again to Bryan. Avery had to take off on us. He's a busy man, and we know Bryan is too, so we thank you guys for stopping by and listening to their stories. And Bryan, we have a couple of things for you, just for your time and your energy, if you, yeah.
Sure.
And most of all, thank you for being so excited about joining the program and teaching these individuals a little bit about what you know. And we look forward to working with you in the future. And thank you guys for showing up. It's a Monday evening after Thanksgiving. I know how difficult that is. But thank you guys for showing up. And once again, if you guys can take some time and fill out the survey, it really helps us out and it helps us keep our programming going. So have a good night.